Welcome back to ＳիվիլՆեթ. I'm your host, Pat. I'm joined today by Kev Orkian, British Armenian and famous comedian. Kev, good to have you.
Good to be here, dude. Good to be here. It's great. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Yeah, it was funny to bump into you in the streets. I mean, Yerevan's so small, right? You can't go more than a few meters without bumping into everyone, including...
Absolutely. It's family. Literally, everyone's family, aren't they? Yeah. So it's great.
Yeah, no, I recognized you. I went to your show in Montreal. Yeah, it must have been 14, 15 years ago. I mean, now you're a silver fox, of course.
I am, baby.
I still recognize
you. And you were a toddler probably 14
years ago. You aged like fine wine. I mean, it's impressive. You'll have to tell us about your secrets afterwards.
There is none, mate. There is none. It's just Armenian. It's Armenian oil that seems to be keeps the skin supple.
No, it sparked this discussion actually, right? Was we were discussing your impressions in Armenia, and you said there's an air of hopelessness. Or there's a lack of optimism, which is very understandable given the last couple of years what's happened to Armenia.
Yeah. I mean, I came here because of Armenia Fund, and part of my project is to go to the corners of Armenia where these displaced Artsakhians, let's call them Artsakhians, who have been forced out of Artsakh and are now living in different villages and regions on the front line, near the front line. And I went there and there seems to be a lot more hope and strength there amongst the communities. You know, there's 100 people here, 50 people here and whatever. And everyone's really coming together and giving themselves strength like a family, you know? Yeah. But here in Yerevan, I think there's a lack of knowing what is going on around the villages. So there seems to be more of an anxiety here and sadness here than there is there.
Yeah, for sure. So I came prepared, actually.
Go.
So I do know that, again, everything I'm about to list doesn't negate the horrors that our people went through for the last couple of years. But I think that if you're not an optimist, or if you're not at least working towards something, then what's the point? Yeah. What are we even doing here?
Absolutely.
So I think there's so much bad news going around that the good news often gets drowned out. So I've compiled a nice list for you. You challenged me to do this when we met. So before the podcast, I said, I'll have it ready. So listen, this year, the budget revenues are over 2 times 2018's budget revenues. So Armenia is no longer a poor country. Actually, the biggest problem that the government is facing is the administrative resources to actually spend that money. There's no lack of money, right? So in other words, when people pay their taxes and people don't actually steal stuff, we actually are not a poor country anymore. Armenia is now,
let's applaud that.
It's
that's
phenomenal.
An applause. Yeah.
Armenia is now the least corrupt ex-Soviet country outside of the EU countries. So in other words, the 3 Baltic states. We are less corrupt than Ukraine. We're less corrupt than Moldova. Less corrupt than Georgia. And these are countries who have been very impressive the last few years. But
let me challenge you on this. But we're probably one of the smallest countries, which is
why they're per capita. Like they adjust for. We're talking about institutional corruption. And Georgia has 1 million people more than us, and Moldova is the same size as us. It's only Ukraine that is 10 times larger than us.
Okay.
We're talking at an institutional level. Unemployment has reached a record low, 11.7%.
Brilliant.
Still more to go, but getting better. Armenia is #1 in the region on the Human Freedom Index. So as a libertarian myself, freedom ranks very, very high for me. I'm very happy. The freer a society is, the more it can innovate and be prosperous.
Absolutely.
We're number 26 on the planet.
In what?
In the
freedom of speech?
in the Human Freedom Index. So the entirety of our rights and our freedoms, including freedom of speech. Tourism is booming, and this is important because I'm a big believer that we're not telling our story enough. So people who come here interact with us, well, they have a stake in this country. They care about this country. So the next time a calamity happens, we have more awareness.
Actually, on that note, I'm really pleased you mentioned that because part of my strategy for 2018, when we filmed the first documentary, Armenia Uncovered, was for that. It was to boost tourism into this country. So in a way, I feel proud that we have actually boomed in tourism within Armenia. So I'm hoping my little project had something to do with that, which I think, if it did, it would be an incredible feat.
Yeah, well, we're all playing our part, every single one of us. We shouldn't. I do want to touch up on that, what the role of every individual Armenian is. But for the interest of still listing all the good news, we've improved 3 positions, and we're still leading in the region in the startup ecosystem ranking this year. We're #1 in the Caucasus in terms of startups, businesses, and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And we're number 57 in the world. Shell. Royal Dutch Shell is opening 22 gas stations here. Now, let me unpack this because this was, to me, a non-event, right? But a friend of mine explained it to me really, really well, and he was a former oil executive, and he said, look, Shell are not idiots. Shell's biggest product is not its gas. It's the little convenience store next door. The coffee, the burgers, the snack bars, and so on. That they're opening 22 means that they anticipate a growing of the middle class in Armenia. In other words, the upward trajectory of Armenia to continue at this pace. More and more rich people, more and more money to spend. So they're not opening 1 or 2 stations, they're opening 22. So this is a fantastic bit of news for us.
It's an incredible marketing strategy.
Yeah. Economic growth is 7.5% so far this year, fastest growing in Eurasia. Armenia, for the first time in its history, has crossed $8,000 USD in GDP per capita income. This is adjusted for population. So we are now the richest country in the South Caucasus, richer than Georgia, which has access to the sea and no genocidal neighbors, richer than Azerbaijan, that should be the next Dubai if it weren't for all their corruption. And we've done this in spite of a pandemic. We've done this in spite of 2 wars. We've done this in spite of borders being closed. 9% of our energy this year comes from renewables, and first time ever, Armenia's foreign direct investment has surpassed over $1 billion this year. So I just wanted to start off on the right foot here.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think what you've done there is proven that through such adversity, we have risen through the ashes of destruction to create this incredible positivity. And I think this is one of the things that I always talk about when I'm doing my videos. I think Armenians in general have endured year after year, century after century, so much hate towards us, so much corruption, so much war, so much ethnic cleansing and genocide, but yet we seem to rise above that. Yep. And one of our biggest exports, I believe, truly believe, is our will to continue and to grow, and our mindset behind that. And I think that's something that we should always be celebrating.
I think that's really one of the most interesting elements of our culture, is that, like, we like to kvetch, you know, the term. It's like we like to complain, but in a circular manner. It's kind of a thing, right? How's things going? Oh, you know, my aunt, this, that. Yeah, but you're seeing, like, it's, you know, on social media you'll have a lot of complaining, but there's 10 times more people who are quiet and they're working with their heads down. Yeah. To make this country a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's worth celebrating. This is why it doesn't negate the suffering. It doesn't negate that winter's coming and we have 50,000 refugees so far who don't have permanent housing. They found housing for 50,000. So half of our Artsaksis are still in limbo. It doesn't negate our very serious, very real security threats, but it does show that there's something to work for. And I think that's important.
And you know, going there on the front line yesterday and visiting some of these jambars, as they call them, and these hostels as such, and seeing the love and the positivity within those organizations, you think to yourself, you know, we need to just lend a hand here. We need to do what we need to do. But these guys know how to survive, and we just have to give them the ability and the infrastructure for them to survive. I think that's it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. This is the funny thing, right? Is that from Singapore all the way to Canada, anywhere Armenians go, they tend to prosper, except Armenia until recently. And all it really takes is that underground of freedom, that liberty. Yeah. The fact that the government's not going to steal all of your stuff, you're not going to have to give 50% over to the president's brother or whatever. If Armenians are left alone, they tend to prosper. And that's what makes me hopeful, is that within our blood, there's some kind of magical ability to do commerce and to build wealth and to create something worthwhile. And you're seeing it burgeoning. Definitely. It's really impressive.
No, definitely. And look, I mean, I speak to a lot of business people. I interact with a lot of business men and women around the world. And as soon as they say to me, "What nationality are you?" I go, "I'm Armenian." They go, "Oh, the best business people in the world." And you think to yourself, well, if we're getting that kind of a compliment, we must be doing something right.
Yeah. Tell us about your documentary. What's the premise? What's the idea behind it? And tell us a little bit about creating it.
Okay, so the first one was Armenia Uncovered. The premise behind that was what we just spoke about, was to elevate tourism within Armenia. So the second documentary, Ararat Uncovered, pretty much the same thing. But the difference this time is the fact that we wanted to also instigate information to people around the world that, you know, Ararat will and always has been for the Armenians. It doesn't matter the fact that it was handed over to Turkey or this was given to Azerbaijan or this was given to Iran and Iraq and this and that. It makes no difference. At the end of the day, Armenians have been around here for centuries, and we wanted to highlight the fact that Armenia was built, thanks to Tumanyan, with the idea that every house, every building, every window sees Ararat. Yeah. So we decided to do a documentary that would educate the world about who Armenia is, what the history of Armenia was, the places that disappeared, that were given to other people through war, through whatever, and to give people an idea of the beauty and the culture of our country. So we climbed Mount Ararat and we did a documentary on it. And
casually climbed up.
Casually. Well, listen, hey, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but yeah, that was one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life. And but it was wonderful. We climbed, we documented it, and we went to Ani, we went to Akhtamar, we went to so many places, and we recorded what I believe is an important part of history, where from our first documentary, Armenia Uncovered, which has now become a historical archive documentary, not a modern archive anymore, because some of the areas we went to from Artsakh and Stepanakert and this and that, whatever, no longer belong to us. It's gone. So it's become a historical archive, rather than a modern documentary. So yeah, it's sad, but I think we needed to document it to make sure that people knew who it was and what it was.
Yeah, it's unbelievably painful.
Yeah,
everything that we've lost, but this gives a renewed impetus to getting our story out there. Now, you're, I mean, other than being a silver fox, of course, you're something of an Armenian brand ambassador, right? Tell us what this identity means to you, being British, being Armenian, expressing our culture through different language, in English, right? What does that mean to you, being Armenian today?
Look, for me, my mother always instigated a certain element of, you're Armenian, you're Armenian, you're Armenian. I mean, I was born in England, but my first language is Armenian. It was always Armenian, Armenian, Armenian. You got to learn Armenian. You got to keep the language going. You got to keep the culture going. You got to keep history. You got to know exactly where we're from. The fact that we had a genocide in 1915, and this has happened, and that's happened, and the churches, and it was all that kind of element. My mother's passion is predominantly, and to a certain degree my father's, but my mother's passion was very much that concept of, we need to keep the heritage of Armenian very up there, very strong, very powerful. So for many years, and in England, there's not a lot of us in England that are Armenian. So for us, getting that kind of connection with Armenia was difficult. It was for me, it was for my friends. But then kind of looking at the future, as I grew older, I became an ambassador to the fact that I was touring around the globe doing comedy shows to Armenians and things, and realizing actually that we are a very unique culture, a very unique entity. We have a history that is very rich in many, many ways, but yet is very sad in many other ways. And I thought, I'm going to take that tragedy, I'm going to turn it into a stand-up comedy show. I'm going to start educating the world who I am, and what my heritage is. And then I realized the more I did it, the more important it became to me that actually I've really got to do something about this, because, and like you live here. This is something that I think a lot of Armenians, young Armenians, do need to consider. Whether or not you come and live here permanently is not what I'm justifying in this conversation. What I'm saying to you is, do come to Armenia and see it for yourself. Don't read it in books. Don't watch it on documentaries. Don't listen to your friends. Come and see it. So for me, Ararat Uncovered was all about that. It was about saying to everyone who's young and old, if you've never come here, get a flight. Come here, see it for yourself, experience it for yourself, taste it for yourself, smell it for yourself, and then go back to where you come from and spread the awareness to anyone who isn't Armenian.
Yeah, there's something undeniably special about this place.
Totally.
You feel it in the air. There's something interesting. I find, like, I don't know, our Armenian identity needs to be upgraded. I think that we're at a very serious crossroads in our history. We've been saying for 120 years, never again, never again, never again. And the unfortunate truth is that by saying that, we expected that no one else would ever let it happen again.
That's right.
We've now realized that 120 years later, it did happen again, and no one can do anything about it.
No, that's right.
And so we need to decide what kind of future it is that we want to create.
Well, the future I want to create, and I think, and I've seen your little baby boy as well, and I've got 2 sons myself, and I think the first thing that we need to create is being proud of who we are and what we are. Stop being a victim. Start being a forefront thinking of the future, of what we need to do, not just for our country, but for our people. Too many years we've been living under that shadow of, 1915 genocide, 1915 genocide. Every single documentary that was ever produced was about the 1915 genocide. Me, Andy, Andy Simon, the director and the writer of Armenia and Ararat Uncovered, and Rafi Tanelian, who's the producer, London-born, London-based producer, said, we don't want to talk about the genocide. This documentary we do not want to talk about the genocide. Enough is enough. Let's move forward with who we are and what we're doing. So we did it. Of course, don't get me wrong, we did touch upon the genocide, particularly with the words of Hitler and the words of this and Stalin and whatever. We did a little bit of that. But the predominant context of the documentary was about pushing forward. And that's what I want to teach my sons. I'm hoping that's what you want to do. Yeah. And that's what we want to do to the future of young generation of Armenians, is stop thinking about the past. Let's start thinking about the future, because that's where we're going.
Yeah, I agree entirely. We need to get out of this learned helplessness. Even in the diaspora. I had a fantastic Armenian education growing up, but there always was this. I still remember my first ever girlfriend with a French Canadian Italian family sitting at a dinner table, and they're like, "Well, we've never heard of Armenians before, so what do? I start telling them about the genocide, and that's fine. However, given where we're at now, I would far prefer that I bump into someone in the street and they go, "Oh, you're Armenian." The Robin the robot comforted my son when they were having surgery in the hospital, and you know what I mean? Like we need to be recognized for achievement rather than for victimhood.
Absolutely. Spot on, word for word. We need to be recognized for our achievements. We need to be recognized for the things that we're doing, the innovative insights into our mindsets, and the fact that actually Armenians have won numerous awards in robotics, numerous awards in computer science, and we need to start pushing those forward, because in actual fact, if you look at one of the biggest things we documented in Armenia Uncovered was PixArt. And PixArt is like, I mean, they've got more monthly subscribers than LinkedIn, and yet nobody knows about them, the fact that they're Armenian. So the fact that this is going out there and people are seeing it and going, oh, really? Yes. Not only did this come from free education that was given to these students in the first place, they then created a platform where PixArt became one of the biggest art platforms on the planet, and they've got more subscribers than LinkedIn. Come on, guys. I mean, let's start boasting about that rather than what happened in 1915. So yeah.
Are you following Tumo at all?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah. Absolutely.
They're opened in Berlin, in Stockholm, in Bern, in Switzerland. Like, we're now exporting to countries that donate money to us. Yeah, we're exporting education to their children.
Absolutely.
Like I can't think of a more beautiful way to give back.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. And do you know what? I love that about Tumo as well, because I went there. We documented Tumo as well in Armenia Uncovered, and I was sitting there speaking to one of the leaders of the Tumo education kind of platform, and I was saying to her, what you're doing here is innovative. It seems unbelievable that you've got free education that's going out to 8,000 students who come here from the age of 12 to 18, and you're giving them education on what we would consider expensive education in other countries. And she goes, yeah, but we have to do this. If we want the future of Armenia to be better than it is now, then we have to give this back to our children. And I'm thinking, I love this mindset. And it's what other countries now are adopting and using for their platforms. Yeah. Brilliant.
I love also the fact, one element of our culture, this is something that a host on CivilNet, Eric Hagopian, always says, that Armenia is an anarchist collective. And Tumo is exemplary of that. It's like, yeah, are there serious gaps in the education system? Yeah. Will the government someday catch up? I don't know. I'm not a big believer in any government solution. But we're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it ourselves. Let's educate children. Let's get to work, right?
Listen, at the end of the day, you show the platforms, the government will follow anyway. Yeah, but it's always the individuals that take lead.
And you're seeing that everywhere. In Armenian society, you're seeing IT companies who are coming up with really interesting, advanced solutions for our security needs. You're seeing Tumo who's educating, and that's not just Tumo. There's Armath Labs. There's a whole bunch of other ones going on.
COAF, that's another
one. COAF is a fantastic one.
My God, have you seen that building they've got? Come on, it's the best.
Yeah. So when are you moving here?
Well, you laugh. No. You put me on the spot, and I'm going to tell you right now.
First, folks.
You heard it here first, and honestly, you've heard it here first. I've actually been talking about the possibility of investing in a property here, And the idea behind it is that I would bring different comedians and entertainers from America, Canada, London, France, wherever, and bring them here, do events throughout the year, maybe 4, 5, 6 events here, comedy shows, variety shows,
Amazing.
and bring them here, put them in our property. So they come, they become ambassadors of Armenia. They see the quality, the love, the heritage, everything here. They experience, and then they go back to their country and go, you know what? That was awesome what we just experienced. That was great. But they do it through the art of, you know, events here, shows and whatever. And I'm genuinely thinking about buying a place here and then maybe moving here in a few years' time as a form of kind of coming and going with my businesses and bringing my family here and bringing them up with the heritage of what I was brought up. Because, you know, I'm married to an English girl. My sons, they're nearly 10 years old. They speak a little bit of Armenian. They understand what Armenia is because I've explained that to them. But the only way you can experience it is if you come here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. Tell us, what do you think that non-Armenians most often misunderstand or just get wrong about Armenian culture or Armenian identity?
That's a really, really interesting question, but also a slightly difficult one because different countries have different thoughts. So in London, in England, Armenia, no one speaks about them. Okay, so if I walk up to any random person on the street, random, and I say, hi, I'm Armenian, they go, and what's that? Yeah, that's what it is. You go to America, somewhere like Los Angeles, there is a more predominant aspect of it because there is more Armenians there. And there is that context where people can walk up and go, hi, I'm Armenian. Oh, yeah, you were from Glendale. Oh, right, so you know who I am. So there is that context. But then you go to somewhere like France and you say, I'm Armenian. Oh, it seems to be a much more, oh, yeah, you people are really like, you're in the schools, you're in the governments, you're this. So every single country has a different opinion about who we are and what we are. And I think personally, to educate non-Armenians through what we've just spoken about, through the achievements, I think will allow the younger generation of non-Armenians to understand actually who we are. So I think our secret power is to educate our Armenian children and say to them, be proud of who you are. Talk about what we've achieved rather than what we've done in the past. Talk about what we've achieved. And that's the conversation and momentum we need to, I think, generate to non-Armenians.
Yeah, we need to, let's say that Armenians around the world should become stakeholders in this place. If we want a future for Armenian culture, it's here.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, you know? Pat. Pat, you're spot on again. Not enough Armenians are investing in Armenia.
Yeah.
I think that's so sad, actually, because in actual fact, why are you going to a holiday 4 times a year and you're not dedicating one of those holidays to Armenia? Okay, why are you going to Barbados, Ibiza, Tenerife, Spain, this, that way, Italy? Oh, let's go here, let's go there. But hold on a minute, stop. Why don't you fly to Armenia? Why don't you put a bit of money behind Armenia? Why don't you invest in Armenia? Why don't you go and see your culture, your people? Why don't you see Mount Ararat for yourself in the morning and then say to yourself, yeah, this was worth it. Absolutely worth it. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think more businesses do need to invest in Armenia because how else do we create wealth? How else do we build our economy? How else do we create information for the world to understand who we are? By investing.
I agree entirely. I think the addendum to that as well is that this is not, look, if diasporans are not going to invest, foreigners will. You're already seeing it. You have massive companies who are already setting up businesses here. You have NVIDIA who's opened up. You've got Oracle. You have Google Cloud. I mean, they're seeing the potential. You have, we mentioned as we were walking, you have 60,000 Indian workers here already, right? But the diasporans, 70% of them haven't come to Armenia. So I wouldn't even say that, hey, it's your duty to come here. I would say, hey, this is actually a fantastic place for you to invest in and make money because there are centers of excellence here. So you might as well do it in your homeland. You might as well be selfish, get rich, make good money, live a great life here, and still help the country. More than the $100 a year that you send to Himnadram or something. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Well, that's my idea. I actually want to come here and I want to set up a theatre foundation, an arts foundation. I want to set one up here because I think, there's so much creativity. And actually, one of my biggest passions in life is the fact that I like to identify talent and creativity within individuals. And I think Armenia has a plethora of that. And, you know, these children, these young teenagers, these young 20, 25, 30-year-olds who are coming from Armenia, creating incredible software and coding and art and music, and no one knows. And I'm like, okay, so there's millionaires and billionaire Armenians around the world who are not investing that money into into foundations, not like the one I'm going to be creating, but other foundations, to be able to give a platform to these Armenian kids who can come to these countries, learn everything they need to do, then come back to Armenia and go, hey, I'm Armenian, this is what's happening. Come over here and see what we're doing here. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, I love it. Kev, it's been a real pleasure to have you with us.
It's been an honor, mate. Pat, you're doing awesome stuff. And I credit you actually as a fine example of what it is to pick up your beautiful wife and your child who was born here and to actually come to this country and do what you're doing today. And I think you're a credit and an example to a lot of other young people that don't necessarily need to live here, but do need to come here and work here and project and do projects here and whatever and create momentum. So massive, massive respect to you.
I appreciate that. I'm selfish. I'm here because I like being here. I love my life here. Every one of my friends is either helping wounded veterans, feeding refugees, building a business, founding a startup. I'll finish on one great story. I want to share this with you off camera, but I'll tell you here. I was working with a guy. He's from Armenia. He was 19 at the time, now he's 21, but he served in Artsakh during the war. He was stationed in Martuni. And in the midst of the bombings and the fightings, his entire platoon, they all made an oath that if they get out of here alive, they're leaving Armenia and never looking back. The war ended, they came back to Armenia, they were discharged. He reaches out to me, he says, Pat, this guy was educated in the United States, by the way, he speaks American English. He says, Pat, we all changed our minds. We want to open up a winery in Armenia.
Oh, yeah.
So, and he's now working as a sommelier in one of our famous wine bars on Saryan. And you see guys like that, and you're like, my God, like this place has so much potential.
Oh, good God, yeah. And yeah, like I said, I want to set up a foundation. I want to set up a theatre school. I want to set up an academy here as well. I want to do this stuff. It's a 10-year plan. And over those 10 years, the foundation, the arts foundation that I want to create, it's about helping those artists, those people have a platform to be able to make noise, because ultimately we've stayed silent for many years, and that's enough. Let's start making noise.
Beautiful. Thanks again, Kev.
Pleasure, my brother.
Thanks for watching. This is Pat from ＳiviLNet, and we'll catch you very soon.